with this. So the entire focus of today, and I want to talk about how the state of the job market came to mind when I was listening to unemployment numbers that come through from stats, be it the government, as well as the behind the scenes of what it is that I'm doing here at Exceptional Admins every day. I'm very excited that all of you have joined. Just very quickly, if we haven't met before, I'm the founder of Exceptional Admins, a boutique firm that's based out of Denver, Colorado. And it's an honor to be able to serve the nation now with searches, admin placements, as well as career development is another pillar of work that we do here at the company. Also pointing out some very key data. I have been blessed to be in 6+ years. I'm at the end of my 7th year running this company. I've had the pleasure of connecting one-on-one with over 5,500 professionals in this world of administration, ranging from marketing assistants, receptionists, those aspiring for chief of staff. And I calculated the other day almost 16,000 hours of mission-driven work. And so the things I'm going to share with you today will be backed by a lot of that data. And so I'm very excited to invest in you. And so I want to talk about what our focus is going to be today. I want to cover the fact that the landscape of our industry, the administrative industry, and for those that do listen to the podcast, Exceptional Admins, or have interacted with me, I still kind of call myself we and us in it because I'm talking to so many of you every day. While I'm a retired administrative individual, I'm still in the thick of something that runs through my veins, the administrative profession. So the landscape of the industry, it is shifting. It's shifting in a very positive way. And there are some elements of the data I'm going to share with you today that might make you pause and might make you wonder what's next for you specifically. Each of you are unique. The value and the things that you bring to the table are unique. Attached to that, let's talk about cash. I'm going to be talking about compensation today. Having started in 2017, we're now in 2023. Salaries have been very interesting, and it's something that I could get on a soapbox about, but I won't. But I will cover a few things that are key in this compensation piece. I do see something in the chat. I just want to make sure I'm not missing anything, so I'm going to continue on. Okay, so the next thing that I want to cover is insights that are going to help you. As I mentioned, each of you are unique. One of the guests mentioned in the chat, executive coordinator / analyst. I believe it was Alan. Title shift is a big thing I'm going to be pushing for in 2024. I've been very carefully sprinkling it throughout the last 5 and 6 years, more so 5 because of the last 2 years and the change that I've been seeing in the data that I've been doing. So I'm going to be giving you some planning. I do realize there's a few people joining us today in the chat who are looking for employment. I hope that you can hear every word that I'm going to be sharing because of the fact that I'm going to be giving you some tips. I'm going to be giving you guys some tea. There's going to be some tea today about what happens behind the scenes here. For those that know me well, I talk sometimes about the fact that I would like a reality show, not to make it about me, but to make it about all the phone calls, all of the lackluster posture of executive assistants or admins that show up to phone calls who aren't prepared. So let's talk about the importance of being attentive and what it looks like in the landscape. And what I want to point out here is, for those that don't have a direct line and access to HR or bigger decision-making conversations, what I wanted to do with this time with you was let you see what they're seeing. And in order for you to understand the data that they're using to make decisions, we need to, and this is going to be a theme today that came up to me this morning while I was doing my hair, we need to start the change from the inside on the admins. We're saying, and I saw quite a bit yesterday, for compensation isn't enough. I actually put up a poll. Would you take less pay for remote work? And right now, by 60% of, I think, almost 400 contributors to the poll on the LinkedIn page for Exceptional Admins, they're all saying no. Which it was just a curious thing because it was based off of an article. So you need to know what they're seeing in the sense of the inside job of the hiring managers on how they're making decisions, which essentially is driving your career. And how I think on the inside, compensation and title needs to start with you. There are more admins than there are HR managers. And in order for the admins to start creating that wonderful shift for the trajectory of you, your success, happiness, and big time fulfillment in your career, if you looked back in your timeline, like, wow, that was great, it's going to start with the admins. Okay, so let's look at some job data first. And I have the Bureau of Labor Statistics was a big contributor, and there's also some excerpts from Forbes article that's from 2023. Okay, not going to read that too much, but understanding the job market is the key, right? What I want you to do is I want you to understand what everyone else is seeing. If you can see from 2021, that's as far back as I went. 2020 was too much of an anomaly. I can verbally speak to 2017 when I started the company. I'm going to do that here. In 2017, the unemployment rate was in the twos, the low twos. If you look at this chart, we haven't seen that in the last 3 years. And we definitely didn't see it in 2020, other than maybe in January, because it was a spillover from the prior year. That low unemployment rate indicates that there aren't a lot of people looking. And so what that means is that if you are looking, you have a higher advantage of being seen. But I have found in the work that I'm doing, when they think that when the unemployment rate number is low, HR gets a bit more stingy on wanting to carry out the search, to talk to more people, because they're afraid, since there's so few looking, that their unicorn or purple squirrel, or on the precipice of those two categories, is out there. So they drag it out. We here at the company try not to drag it out. We want everybody to have an enjoyable experience. Looking for a job can feel like being in the dentist chair trying to get 2 molars filled. We don't want that at all as a part of our brand. Compensations, when I started in 2017, they were in the 65 to 85. I am speaking specifically to the Denver market. If you did some analysis after this of like the cost of living that year to the cost of living like in Dallas, big markets like Los Angeles, you could get some different numbers. 2018, I started to see an uptick. Funny enough, in 2018 and 19, I started asking what remote options are available. They said none. The job can't be done remotely. Well, we could talk about 2020 and the years beyond that it actually can be. So those are some things I want to point out. We have seen a shift. If you look at the orange numbers for the row 2023, it can't make up its mind. It can't make up its mind. So how do you take in this data and what do you do? It's an interesting talent market. And with that, it is more important than ever that you have your own unique individual brand and how you add value, and what outliers, what unique differentiators are making you, with the title executive assistant as a secondary. I want you all to start thinking about what is your primary amazing component that stands out in your resume. And this is even for those that are employed. Job promotion options, salary increase options. And I'm going to use myself as an example. I'm Helani. I've been here for 3 years. I still have the title executive assistant. I want to get executive administrator instead. I want maybe executive coordinator. Those types of titles need to start differentiating you from others in the company. And so if you're looking for employment, this number 3.8 specifically indicates that there are more people looking. And I can tell from the emotion that I hear on so many of my calls. There's 300 applicants, Helani. What do I do? And I'll tell you from a resume perspective, I'm seeing them on a weekly basis. They all look the same. And so if your career storytelling is flat, the individual who has 8 seconds to make a decision on whether or not they want to talk to you, you need to stand out. Your resume needs to be a commercial for you and how you add value. I do have a podcast episode, 2 of them that would be very valuable for anyone that is looking for employment. One is titled WTF, It's Not What You Think. And the second one is titled Now What? That's episode 16 and episode 21. All right, so real quick, from a Forbes article, here's some excerpts, job trends. With a healthy but unpredictable labor market, workers are eager to make their moves before the economy takes a more definitive downturn. Yes. For unsatisfied employees, it's better to switch jobs now than to stick in unfilling jobs. I want to point out, looking for new employment is not a guarantee. If you can ride it out and stay where you're at for a little while longer, which is what I talk about in the WTF episode, you might actually save yourself than hurt yourself. In the essence that you have job security, you have historical knowledge of where you're at. We do see in the economics, and here's 2 key things that came up. The unemployment rate changed. In the job market update, more jobs were consumed by people over the last 30 days. However, of that number that the economists have told us, 50% of that number is part-time people. So people are grabbing part-time jobs on top of their full-time jobs, which just is really, really hard, but the economic times are telling us that. And then also, for the sake of economics, it's extremely important to realize that we are still experiencing inflation, and someone shared that this will become the new norm and that will be the trailing of salaries to catch up with this inflation. Not to be depressing, we're going to carry on. So one of the big things, and I just mentioned this is also an excerpt from the Forbes article, is to be more strategic in their job search methods. It's no longer enough to send the same resume. I see resumes, I'm like, this person really hasn't changed it since 2004. You can kind of see just that progression. The bullets are there. There's a lot of overlap. There's a lot of redundancy. And then there's no capturing in the opening summary. I have a personal opinion. I'm not a big fan on cover letters. I don't think actually people read them. That's why I'm a fan on sort of that quote 8-second hook, which would be your opening summary. In 2023, resume and professional brand optimization. And it's interesting. I'm like, oh, maybe Forbes has a bug in my office listening to the fact that I'm talking about those two things on a regular basis, which clearly they don't. But those two things are extremely powerful. And I loved that I found that to share with all of you today. All right. So national industry data. We're going to go a little quickly on this one, but to point out, there are over 3,100 plus jobs of executive assistants currently employed in the United States. 86,000 of all executive assistants are women and 13% are men. That's exciting. There's a great population. I know we have several gentlemen joining us today, which is awesome, that representation. The average executive assistant is 49 years old. I'm 44. So another statistic later comes out of they're going to tap out. That will leave an open seat, hopefully, for someone to join this profession. The next thing is executive assistants are most in demand in New York, which I have a chart later on what that salary is, as well as what the cost of living difference is. San Francisco pays an average wage of $64,000. Some of you might be gasping because I sure did. I've talked to admins and none of them in San Francisco, none of them make this low. So this comes into the compensation pain point for so many of us, you. Where the heck are they getting these numbers? Why is this number still low? Quote, we're not paid enough to the value that we offer. And then for the Silicon Valley, tech startups, the Facebooks and the big companies, Ancestry and all that, they're paying in the six figures. I had a spreadsheet of over 125 different salaries ranging from 65 to 195. But how many years of experience did each of them have? The actual filtering option to really get down to a true hard number is impossible. And I realize that's a bit disappointing, but it is impossible. So the advantage here, seeking opportunity always with something that's negative, the opportunity is going back to you individuals deciding on how do I add value? What's my unique definition or differentiator that allows me to stand out so that I can get the analyst certification, which I'll be talking about that actually in just a few minutes. And how do I show myself as not just, which my whole thing now is helping all of you remove the just from your identity. And it starts with you, not the HR department, not the executive. It starts with you, your executive posture, how you're adding value. I thought this next bullet was profound. We talk often, or I hear often, especially on LinkedIn, the pay and wage gap. Women are making more in this profession by 2 cents on the dollar than men. So keep that in mind. Washington is the best state for executive assistants. I've never been there, so that's really neat. I'm imagining trees and beauty. I do think and wonder about how much sun that they get, knowing that it can rain a lot, but that was an interesting stat. Executive assistants are 52% more likely to work at public companies in comparison to private. So another chart that I'll have here shortly. And just so everyone knows, this data and all the other data I'm showing you is pulling from ZipRecruiter. Zippia is the company that statistics that I pulled this from. They get from the Bureau of Labor of Statistics. They use census, the current job openings from all of the job boards that are out there. So this is where this comes from. And they're saying that the database of 30 million profiles was a help and aid in this data. Okay, let's go to the next thing. The company data that was just tied to the public and the private. If you're thinking about where you want to park yourself for a while, not knowing what the rest of this decade has economically, career potential, Fortune 500 companies have more employment of administrative individuals. And in this case, they're saying executive assistant, that sort of universal title. Another is companies that have over 10,000 employees. And so if you were to look at the job boards and try to find a company that's going to have more seats available, and so here's some tips from my job seekers: sleuth the HR people respectfully, right? Look them up, see what they like, what posts that they reshare, repost, what comments they make, hoping that they're active, which I'm finding a lot of HR people are becoming more active for that talent acquisition component. Send individual messages. I get canned messages often like, hey, I saw this job posting. I'd love to talk to you. And because 7 other people sent me the same one, I know that that was the automatic option that LinkedIn gave them to quickly send. Your first way to stand out is to customize it. I noticed that you like following Brené Brown. I've read her book. I'm very interested in your company for these 2 reasons. May I be considered for this current job, job number 125, here's the link to it, for an interview. That's going to help you stand out more than the canned, yes, for convenience response that they're giving you. So look at these data and just kind of think. I believe we have a poll. Leah, if you could drop that poll, that would be great. And I think I missed another poll. That one, we want the poll on the company size, please. We had 8 polls for all of you today, and we did miss one. My bad. What size is your company? Go ahead and give us some responses to that. Curious to see where everyone's sitting. Yeah, very cool. 17 people, 18. Yeah, kind of. Right now, 1,000 to 10,000. And so it says, what is your company size? That's the poll. We've got less than 50, 50 to 100, 100 to 500, 500 to 1,000, 1,000 to 10,000, which as we saw in the chart, which is still up on my screen, the greater than 10,000 from those that are joining us today. It looks like that 1,000 to 10,000 is winning. Okay, super duper. All right, I'll share those results so everyone can see. And then Leah, why don't you pull up, yeah, let's pull up, I'm going to launch this one. Everyone, let's get some thoughts here. How do you typically stay updated on industry trends and best practices as a career professional? We have this open: attending industry conferences, online courses and webinars, professional association and networking, company sponsored training. No one has picked that yet. Oh, that's so disappointing. Oh, someone picked it. That's great. Reading industry publications and blogs. So the question is, how do you typically stay updated on industry trends and best practices as a career professional? Attending industry conferences, online courses and webinars, professional association and networking groups, company sponsored training, reading industry publications and blogs. All right. Okay, so we'll end that one. Very interesting. It looks like online courses, professional association, reading industry publications it won this poll. And so if you aren't quite sure where to maybe start putting the investment in building your personal brand, as well as taking in new information, you can always learn one thing new from any article. And so that's really great. Awesome. Okay, let's carry on. All right, so on this next slide, I want to talk about the future of our profession. And I want to talk about how they're indicating a decline. And I want to talk about the candidate calls that I have. Let's say out of 15 calls in 1 week, right at the top of any phone screen, I ask, do you have the job description nearby? And sadly, 3 will say yes, and 12 will say no. And they'll follow up their no with, well, I just assumed it was another EA role. And I believe that that is hurting the caliber and potential of this profession because, as I mentioned a bit ago, it needs to start with all of you. That executive posture, the level of intellectual curiosity, and sadly, preparedness. If candidates are showing up that way to phone screens, and I'm only having so many a week, and all these other jobs at any given time, LinkedIn has 75 executive assistant jobs posted, and the majority are presenting a posture in the way I just described, the HR people aren't going to see the difference. And so as a collective, it's a chance to start elevating from the ground up. And that's all of you, that ground up component. And so on this chart, and I'll zoom in just a little bit, other occupations will increase. They are saying, everybody, I know it says secretaries and administrative assistants. Let's just bypass that. There's a decline by 10%. And how do they come up with that? They come up with that for the fact that they are looking at the frequency of job postings that are up, right? As I showed with the Zippia earlier, they're scanning the entire internet, which is awesome. And with that scan, they're seeing how many job boards, how many LinkedIn profiles, which will possibly affect the shift I'm proposing with title changes. Because if they go to scan for just the air quotes executive assistant, and the gentleman, Alan, who's joined us today, he's executive coordinator, he's not going to show up in that. So there will be a sort of decade course correction, which we absolutely need to consider as the opportunity and gift of getting somewhere great, because of the fact that this profession is amazing. Every time I talk to a leader, I talk about the transformation of life after hiring someone like you. And I realize I might sound like I'm overselling, but I don't, because it's a gift. After 150 searches, thousands of calls that I mentioned, so many of you love this profession, and I still love it. It still runs through my veins, which is why it's great to be of service to all of you. So as you can see here, there's a decline happening. It is going to be between this last year and 2032. How are we going to course correct? And I've got some great advice for those going forward. For those that are interviewing, standing out, having stronger questions, intellectual curiosity, overly prepared with the job description, some really healthy researching on the company, just those little simple things which are at your disposal and quote within your control, help you stand out on a phone screen compared to the others who are seeing it as just another EA role. So I hope that that helps you. Also, just at the bottom here, which ties into the 49 years old, and we're going to run over, I'm sorry, everyone, 49-year-old age, there's going to be the replacement of those that either tap out, do something different, go part-time. And so just thinking about that, this last thing, technology enables staff in many organizations to prepare their own documents without the help of secretaries. Again, avoid the word. Additionally, many executives, secretaries, and executive administrative assistants support more than one manager. That's the other thing. AI, artificial, streamlining things, one assistant to 6 people. That's also what's going to contribute to the decline. So if you want to think about an executive and a 2-to-1 or a 3-to-1 assistant ratio, that would be something you want to articulate when you're interviewing, that there's more time and accuracy with work and so on. All right, so let's talk about compensation. I know so many of you joined today to hear this. So being strategic about compensation is crucial for financial well-being and job satisfaction. It ensures fair pay, benefits, and a positive work environment while supporting your long-term financial goals. I'm in the middle of engaging with a financial advisor who's going to be doing several events with me next year in 2024. I want the audience of administrative individuals to start becoming financially sound and smart on finances, from your 401k to saving. So I'm very excited to announce that here today, that we'll have that as an offering next year that really is going to help you understand that dollar for dollar, that compensation. And so I can't wait to finalize those details. All right, the next thing, compensation facts. Fear of disapproval, which is why some of you choose to just not ask and stay where you're at. Quick story. I had a client, office of the CEO, and we were looking to hire a very high-end executive assistant here in the Denver market. I explained to them what the compensation range was at the time, which premiums on salaries were 22% above average last year. We've now stabilized to 6 to 7% above standard from 2019. Ultimately, we're back in the less than 6 figures. Will we see 6 figures again? I don't know. Historically here in Denver, 2 to 3 to 4 jobs a year would have 6 figures. There are now probably double that. I currently have 2 jobs open that are both in the close to the 6-figure salary. Also one in Utah that's 6 figures. They wanted to post the job, but they couldn't post it with the title executive assistant because their financial data from their own internal report said that the title needed to be absolutely different to be at the caliber of 6 figures. So if you're looking at a job posting and it looks very structured, 10 bullets, and it says executive assistant, and it's a low salary, and I'm not going to mention a number because I can't speak for the whole nation, it's because they've done market data on the data I showed you on the prior slides that gets you that 64 to 70,000. So if you're an assistant and you should be making more than that mentioned, still apply, but your opening summary should hook on that value and difference that you bring above a executive assistant who may not have those extra offerings, if you will. Okay, lack of transparency. Some organizations don't. Here in the state of Colorado, we have a law that was passed that you have to actually post the salary. When I've done searches in other markets, Boston, candidates said, thank you for posting the salary. And I said, well, it's standard for us as a company based on where we're at. And I think that's going to be a trend in the next 3 years that all states are going to have that transparency, which are great for you, but hurtful for people in the company that say, hey, you're hiring for that. That's more than I'm making. And now from an HR perspective, they're going to be embracing additional conversations, which should be great because they're right-sizing the candidates. Subjectivity. This is huge. A small office of 5 people that's a private equity firm is going to pay $65,000 for an admin, but the title's executive assistant. And then you're going to go to, as we saw earlier, the chart for the administrative titles and company size. They're going to have executive assistant with 10,000 employees, and it's going to be totally different. So the whole thought of executive assisting and the branding of it, it needs to happen. And it starts with you, as I've been mentioning, which may feel like a big undertaking. It's totally worth it, just like your health and your wellness. I want to talk about your review here for just a minute, because I see here uncomfortable conversations, fears of rejection. If you're going to have a review, in that review, you need to spend, and let's say it's an hour, 20 minutes only on the past. I have this wonderful woman out of California I've been spending time with, helping her prepare for her review. And I've been giving her this advice, and she's been very invested in it, and she's been spending a lot of time on it. When you leave that 20 minutes, this is how many trips you took. This is how many meetings we had. These are 2 M&As. This is the rebranding that we did. This is the systems that were created. This was everything we did. Now that's going to help us over this next period of 12 months. You take that as your launch into the latter part of your 1-hour review. And maybe if it's not an hour, adjust the time. In that review, you talk about what I describe as anchors. These 6 things are going to weigh us down in the first 6 months of this next set of 12 months. And I, Helani, am going to be doing all of these different things to support those anchors, which are going to be backed by all the work we've just done in the last 12 months. If you speak to the future, job security, because they're going to think, I don't want to do any of that. And then they're thinking, wow, this assistant, I'm going to be neutral here. This assistant is thinking strategically about all the things that are the crystal ball, right? When they're trying to look to the future for their growth, you're doing that from the core area of all the tasks that need to be handled that would be from an assistant. And so when you want to talk about your review, that is impressive on the fact that they're not thinking about that, which should be your job. So I also have a podcast episode number 40, Don't Ask for a Raise. Obviously, it's a catchy title for a reason, but I clearly talk about compensation. I don't talk about anchors in that. And then the next one, Leadership Avoids Stagnation in Your Role, episode 53 is amazing. So be sure to check that out. Okay, compensation data. This is, I'm going to bump through these bullets here real quick and just kind of do a summary. What we have here, and this is coming from ZipRecruiter on statistics, is the average, right? The low is 29,000 annually and the high is 101,000. And they're, again, like the other websites, they're pulling this data from across the entire web, which is of value, but also slightly depressing because you're like, well, that 48 an hour looks great. How do I get there? It's through your executive posture, your personal brand, and having something unique that helps you stand out. I have a fun chart here. We test run this yesterday and Leah's like, I can't read it. So I'm going to zoom in for everybody. If we look at the top earners, right, mostly average and 75th percentile. If you're in the top earner, you're adding exceptional value. Maybe you're dealing with investors. And then from a map perspective, as you can see, the upper parts is where the compensation change and the higher salary is. Okay. This was very interesting. I took, if you were in Denver and you made $50,000 a year, in order to live in San Francisco, you now need to make $80,000. We need to really think about the data component of where you live and what salaries are, which is also, as I was mentioning earlier with San Francisco, it's almost impossible to know who's making what. And also the cost of living comes into factor. When I talk to a lot of admins that leave other markets to come here, they have sticker shock. They're like, I'm going to drop 30,000 in salary. I'm like, well, the cost of living, even though it's really expensive to live here, the cost of living is different. And I'm only one person. I can't change the minds of all leaders in the markets, but I'm really on a mission of continuing to do that in my 8th year next year. But getting the mindset of the executive, which, as I mentioned, probably now 3 or 4 times, it starts with you. It starts with you putting yourself in that position of, wow, we haven't met an administrative individual like this before. This person is unique. That I want. If you think about the Hermes store, I don't shop there, but I read this in a really great book. It has just a few of the items, not overly populated racks like TJ Maxx and Nordstrom and stuff. People want unique. That means there aren't a lot of them. And so that should be some inspiration around getting a new title. Okay, compensation shift. This is my favorite slide. So I'm so excited so many of you are still here. In an effort to think about what are popular skills for executive assistants, executive support, great, administration, travel planning, scheduling, and Microsoft Office. We're pretty much, all of you are pretty much in that area. And if you see the compensation, it's sitting in that 60s. So let's not be down by that. But look below. This was very exciting to find. Skills that affect executive assistant salaries. Strategy, 59%. If you go out and get an eCornell, which is a company, or excuse me, a university that I approve of, I've taken a leadership course from them, you have a higher chance with that uniqueness to you to stand out, to get more comp. Next one, maybe you want to overtake training. As we mentioned earlier in one of the polls, there weren't a lot of training inside the organization. So if we see that as a negative, I'm going to point out, what's the opportunity for you? Next one, presentations. I'm sure many of you are doing PowerPoint or using Canva. How can you take that to the next level? Do you go into getting data and saying, here's presented data that I sat for 30 minutes with the accounting team, and we all think this chart belongs here. That strategic thinking is going to have you avoid the executive from decision fatigue, which I realize I'm talking from a space of general, and some of you might be like, my executive would never appreciate that. I realize that then from a consideration perspective, you want to think of another area. Proofreading, I can tell you right now, I did a search in Florida, Portland, Maine. I've done a search, St. Louis, Missouri. They all asked for someone who maybe had paralegal experience. That type of wanting to review, too long didn't read, that's not for me, along with accounting. But if you want to get a really great unique component to you and your personal brand, maybe it's proofreading. Maybe it's taking paralegal courses. Legal documents, whether it's a law office or not, are flowing through all businesses. Can't that be you? And then the next other ones, employee retention, strategic planning, those areas. So if you see this, screenshot this so that you can kind of think about what you want to do next in the essence of maybe getting that uniqueness about yourself. So Launchpad here, same 4 questions from last time. What can we take away from the information shared and the charts, right? There's an informed decision-making now, like going out and getting that unique piece. How should we be thinking about the future? It's competitive, but there's still plenty of opportunity. 300,000 jobs for all of you who add value and change the lives of the executives that you work with is still very rewarding. And what can you do to be adaptable? get a certification, which I mentioned earlier in that poll. Some of you might be changing your mind as you're pausing and reflecting. I wanted to give you this insight. And for anyone that's job seeking, go to LinkedIn, which, by the way, here in Colorado, you can get into lynda.com through a library card for free. Please look into that. That's old data. I don't know how recent and accurate that might be today in 2023. And then what are planning opportunities? Okay, here we go. Finally coming to the end. Thanks everyone for sticking with me. I will be opening it up for a Q&A. I do see there's things in the chat, but I haven't looked at them yet because I've been talking a lot. I've got a lot to share. Planning is so great. Introspection, it serves as a guiding compass, leading you towards a future, teaming with personal and professional growth, where your potential knows no bounds and your happiness knows no limits. It's still a great career. Maybe it's a really tough time. I mean, we've lived through a lot the last 4 years. Push through, be resilient is a big thing, and embrace evolution and progress. Develop aspirations to shape your outlook. That last slide of what you can do and grab is really important for me, for all of you. Okay, so planning for the future. This is an easy slide. Some of you, if not all of you, need to conduct a career happiness audit. I happen to have on the website a Can You Be Happy at Work article that talks through the 3 different P's: pleasure, passion, and purpose. The very first episode of my podcast is What is My Purpose? It is the most listened to, probably because it's number 1, but it's still very valuable. Those are 2 great resources. I also had the pleasure of talking to someone last week. I actually called her for some springboard and conversation. And I said at the end, because I prefaced with this was about me, and she said, of course, go ahead. How are you doing? She worked for 7 years at the most toxic organization. She partnered with an executive who has a very unique personality, for whoever wants to read between those lines. And she now is a chief of staff, just doing amazing things. And she embraced the weight. And she's really making strides because she also stayed resilient. Okay. So the next thing I want you all to think about is consider that risk reward with adding a new strength to your suite of strengths. We are very big here about your suite of strengths. There's Google Suite, Microsoft Suite. What are they offering? Multiple applications for you to use. So your suite of strengths is what's going to help you be unique in how you also tell your career story through your resume. And when you talk about yourself in your review, if you go all the way back to when I was talking about what you can do in your review to stand out and, quote, get additional compensation. Okay, last thing. This is a call to action. I would really love for all of you to take away from today everything shared. But if you sat down with your future self, and your future self, by the way, can be in 6 months. It doesn't have to be those grand 1 year, 5 year, 10 year. Came down and sat down and said, and I'll just use Alan from our attendance today. Alan, what would you want future Alan to come and say to you at that lunch table? I'm so glad you stuck it out. I'm so glad you invested in that certification. I'm so glad you stood up at the company and said, I'd like $1,000 every year to take a course. We need to be doing that. And so think about that. All right, last 3 things. Perseverance is failing 19 times and succeeding the 20th. Julie Andrews, amazing. This next quote is from me. Sometimes inaction is worse than taking action. So for example, the Julie Andrews quote above, 19 times and then the 20th time it worked. If you don't act, that may begin to weigh you down more than taking that risk, to the point of the second thing, that risk reward. What's the risk, but what is the value of the reward? And then the last thing, change is inevitable. Growth is optional. We talk a lot here about changing the word growth to evolution. We are constantly evolving as a society with technology. Think about evolving yourself, maybe parking yourself at your employer right now and just evolving on the side as a side hustle that invests in you later. Delayed success is really amazing. And listen, I'm not paying all of your bills. I have my own bills to pay, and I know what it's like. And I literally could get emotional about those that are looking for work. It's hard. I hear the conversations. I experience the emotion on the calls. It's a lot. Stay resilient. Stay invested in knowing who you are. And so I would just say to everyone, thank you so much for joining. I realized we went over. I knew I had a lot to share. And so thank you so much. And then if anyone has any questions, I'm going to open up the chat. We have people who are making comments, which is awesome. I'll go ahead and stop sharing. It's still just me here. I've got the chat open so I can see everything. Does anyone have any questions? Brandon, thank you for dropping in the chat your episode number 41. Joining from Montana. Hi, Montana. Thank you, Maria. Let me see what else. Seattle. Hello, Seattle. More sun than you would expect. Thank you for telling us that, Nicole. All right, we've got comments. What are some certifications that you would recommend? Apologies, I joined late. Will the presentation be shared? Yes, I decided to record it. I'm still recording right now. I'm going to drop this on my YouTube. I'll probably load it up later today. Hi, Deborah. Amazing information, Honey. Oh, you're so sweet. Yes, happy to be here. Any book recommendations? Great question. I'll come back to the other one about certifications. I have on my page for the Exceptional Admins website a total page about reading for books, leadership books. I just finished a book over the weekend. I've got 3 I'm trying to get through right now, but I bring up really unique books that you wouldn't normally find, and I recommend them on that page. Certifications. Can you speak more about what the skill strategy encompasses? Yeah, so strategy planning, if you go to eCornell, which this will tie into the question about certifications, I have done eCornell. I don't like to recommend things that I haven't personally engaged with, a little bit of the Oprah effect. eCornell has, and I just looked at it yesterday, the library of options, it is expensive. And I'm sorry, I'm recommending something expensive. However, it's absolutely worth it. They have payment plans. Also, I personally have some new courses that are going to come out next year, which won't be certifications, but they'll be of value to helping you propel in your career. So there is a strategy certification that you can get for strategy planning. Leah also just dropped something for all of you to copy and paste into the chat on different things, including a 30% off on the personal branding course. I'm currently in an interviewing process. Certification would be, if you go look at eCornell and look at other websites too, by the way, just to sort of see what those titles are of strategy leadership courses, they would fall under the leadership category. You'll be able to also read the description of like what's in the course, what's the syllabus. I highly suggest that be something that you look into. And then the book recommendation, I just answered that. Great question. Thanks for bringing it to the table. And then help with interviewing. I have several podcast episodes specific to interviewing. I also have 2 articles on my website, Becky, to help you with that, to help with interviewing, books, salaries. Are there any plans to bring back EA University? Hi, Brandon. We're working on something exciting. Hopefully, all of you will be able to be up to speed. If you're in our newsletter, you'll get the news first. Interviewing process. Also, I'd be happy to link with people. Thanks, Nikki Blue, for dropping your LinkedIn there. That was really smart. Got to run, really helpful. Great, Diane. Post-session email will be sent. I want to make sure I grabbed everybody. There's still a few people here. Anyone thinking of a question? Not sure how to ask it. There's no dumb questions here. And I'm still scrolling because I want to make sure I didn't miss anything. I'm so glad people dropped in their LinkedIn. That was great. Hi, Carla. Hi, Diane. There's another question. Let's see. Would like to connect. Perfect. Do you see many companies hiring them? Oh, thanks for asking the question. Here in Denver, we are now absolutely moving away from remote. People want to be in the office. They want synergy, and they want to be able to know when they pay the rent on that commercial property, it makes sense because people are in the building. I have seen a huge decline in Denver and the job boards, and I'm not looking at every state, that remote is now moving to hybrid. Yep, Jennifer's telling us down in Texas, she's seeing more in person. I mean, listen, I'm remote every day. I love to get out. I did my hair and my makeup for all of you today, which happens about twice a week. It's not as remote. Bye, Diane. It's not as remote as we've seen the last 3 years. So I think that gift is going away. Hybrid, right? 1 day a week or 2 days a week, but definitely moving to more in body. Oh, thank you in South Africa. Yes, in person and multiple executives. Yeah, thank you for that. I'm hybrid, but executives are in office, so it only makes sense to support them with meetings and presentations in office. Yes, Beth, thank you for joining. I'm glad that you were able to be here to take in what was a lot of information. And we're almost at our time, like we're well over our time. This will be a long video for everyone. Okay. Everyone, thank you so much. Very excited to have spent the time to put this together for all of you to be able to take in this information. Very excited also for you to take in that conversation with your future self. What does the future look like for you? Be excited about these opportunities. Don't be overwhelmed. Wealth of resources on the Exceptional Admins website. You'll also be able to take in this video as I drop it up on YouTube. And if you listen to the podcast, I would be really excited if you left a review. Thanks, everyone. Have a really great day.